Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 16th of October. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on Arirang TV. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. President Park Geun-hye vows to further expand business cooperation between Korea and Italy on the second day of her visit to the European country. She also calls for greater efforts to achieve unification. Senior military officials from the two Koreas hold their first talks in several years, but fail to find any common ground on easing tensions. South Korea proposes another round of high-level political talks to be held on October 30th. Plus, health officials in the US say they are preparing for more Ebola cases after a second nurse tested positive for the disease. The nurse had been on a flight the day before reporting symptoms. Our top story this morning, President Park, who is in Italy ahead of the Asia-Europe meeting, spoke at the Italy-Korea Business Forum in Milan on Wednesday, where she called on Italy's family-owned businesses to share their know-how with Korea's small and medium-sized businesses. Now, Chae-son, who is travelling with the president, filed this report.
Despite being two of the world's top 10 trading nations, Korea and Italy's trade volume stood at $8.5 billion last year. That makes Italy Korea's 29th trading partner and Korea Italy's 26th. Highlighting Seoul and Rome's 130 years of diplomatic relations and economic similarities, President Park, meeting with Korean and Italian business leaders in Milan, said there still remains great potential for the two sides to cooperate economically. In particular, she talked about Italy's family-owned businesses passed down from one generation to the next that make up more than 80% of the country's GDP.
이탈리아 기업인 여러분이 장수 기업을 키워온 경험과 노하우를 한국의 중소기업들과 적극 공유하셔서 한국에서도 수백 년 이상 가는 가업 승계 기업들이 많이 태어나기를 바랍니다.
Touting Italy's strength in basic sciences and new energy, President Park said combined with Korea's manufacturing technology and IT, the two sides could co-produce innovative products at the center of a new growth engine. The president later met with Korean residents in Italy and acknowledged their achievements, especially in the cultural arts and fashion, would help better bridge the two sides. She also asked them to seek Italian support for Seoul's efforts to bring the two Koreas together and prepare for the costly process of unification.
통일을 이루기 위해서는 우리 내부의 준비도 필요하지만 국제사회의 지지를 얻어내는 것이 매우 중요합니다.
On Thursday, President Park will make her debut at the ASEM with Eurasia Initiative high on her agenda. And she will largely focus on North Korean issues during talks with Chinese Premier Li Keqiang on the sidelines of the summit. Chae-son, Arirang News, Milan.
No progress was made on Wednesday during the first high-level military talks between the two Koreas in 7 years. South Korean officials say the two sides were unable to resolve their deep differences on how to ease into Korean tensions following recent altercations along the heavily fortified border. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
The two Koreas held a secretive round of military talks on Wednesday in attempts to ease tensions in their border regions. Seoul's defense ministry said general-level officers met at the truce village of Panmunjom after Pyongyang proposed the meeting last week. North Korea demanded three things: that South Korean vessels steer clear of the maritime border, that the South Korean government keep activists from flying anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border, and that the media stop slandering the North Korean leadership. In response, South Korea said Pyongyang must respect their de facto maritime border in the West Sea, and that the government cannot stop the spread of the leaflets and restrict the media since South Korea is a liberal democratic society. Last week, South and North Korean patrol boats exchanged fire after a North Korean vessel crossed the de facto maritime border in the West Sea. 3 days later, the two Koreas exchanged gunfire across their shared border after the North fired at South Korean balloons carrying anti-Pyongyang leaflets. The Defense Ministry said Wednesday's meeting was kept secret due to escalating military tensions following the recent clashes. but no concrete agreement was reached, with no date set for their next meeting. Meanwhile, the Unification Ministry confirmed that it proposed to the North on Monday the date for their planned second round of high-level talks. The ministry said South Korea offered to meet on October 30th at Panmunjom, but is still waiting for a response from the North. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Strained bilateral relations between South Korea and Japan may be heading for a new low, moving in the opposite direction of Korea's request that Japan acknowledge its wartime atrocities. Tokyo is actually going to go on a global campaign to deny any wrongdoing when it comes to its sexual enslavement of women, many of whom who were Korean during World War II. Our Kim Min-ji has this report.
The frosty ties between Korea and Japan are far from thawing. The Japanese government says it will actively promote that Japan has committed no sins when it comes to forcing women to serve as sex slaves during World War II. The statement made at a cabinet meeting on Tuesday is in response to a lawmaker's question about the Asahi Shimbun newspaper's decision in early August to retract what it called erroneous articles published in the 80s and 90s about the sexual slavery issue. According to the statement, Japan will strengthen foreign communications so that its stance and handling of affairs receives a fair assessment by the international community. The move goes against Korea's demand that Japan acknowledge and show sincerity about its historical wrongdoings, particularly the sexual enslavement of women. The Seoul government also deplored on Wednesday the Japanese Foreign Minister Kishida Fumio a day earlier repeated Tokyo's claim to Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island, despite Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's administration's pledge to take steps to improve bilateral ties. Adding fuel to the fire, a top cabinet official who has spearheaded efforts to deny Japan's wartime sexual enslavement says she will visit a controversial war shrine that honors A-class war criminals.
When time allows, I'll visit the Yasukuni Shrine.
Japan's chief cabinet secretary Yoshida Suga said there's nothing wrong with paying respect to those who lost their lives while fighting for the country. With Korea and Japan on diverging paths, it seems highly unlikely that long-delayed bilateral summit talks will be arranged anytime soon. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Well, China, as you'd expect, has also lashed out at Japan over this planned visit by its officials to the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hong Lei said on Wednesday that China-Japan relations will only move forward when Japan fully reflects on its past aggressions and breaks away from militarism. Hong urged Japan to honour its commitments to right historical wrongs through concrete actions in order to win back trust from its neighbours. His comments come after, as we heard in that report there, Japanese officials, including one of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's key cabinet members, said visits to the shrine that honours several Class A war criminals would be made during an autumn festival that begins tomorrow, Friday. Turning now to the latest on the cyber surveillance scandal that is rocking Korea and the nation's biggest messaging application, KakaoTalk. Senior prosecutors say there is no legal basis to randomly monitor private conversations on Daum Kakao's chatting app. They say monitoring only occurs in cases of serious crimes such as murder, drugs and human trafficking, not in cases like defamation, as it's not allowed under constitutional law. Users got worried after the government said recently that it wanted to crack down on false rumours circulating in cyberspace. Prosecutors recently vowed to take strong action against anyone who spreads false information about what the authorities can and can't do to monitor these conversations. Daum Kakao says it has lost KakaoTalk users over this scandal. In response, the company says it shortened the amount of time chat histories remain on their databases from 1 week to a couple of days. Korea's largest internet domain management firm came under a massive distributed denial of service or DDoS attack on Wednesday. Whois Corporation says some of the internet sites it manages lost connection with their servers or suffered some instability from around 9 p.m. on Wednesday evening, Korea time. Police are attempting to identify the origin of the attack and work out just how much damage it has done. However, the Korea Internet and Security Agency says there hasn't been significant damage, as it has programs in place that divert these kind of DDoS attacks into so-called cyber shelters. Now, the Ebola scare is spreading in the United States. A second Texas health worker is now confirmed to have contracted the deadly virus. So for more on this story and the other global headlines we're following this Thursday morning, we connect live to our Eunice Kim, who's standing by at the News Centre. Good morning, Eunice.
Hello, Mark.
So what essentially is raising this concern is the fact now that this second nurse to come down with Ebola travelled on a commercial flight shortly after treating the Liberian man who succumbed to Ebola last week.
That's right, Mark. The nurse has been identified as Amber Vinson. She was part of that team that treated Thomas Eric Duncan, who became the first Ebola casualty on U.S. soil last week, as you said. CDC Director Tom Frieden said the 29-year-old had violated guidelines when she got on that plane and traveled to Cleveland from Dallas, despite extensive exposure she had to Duncan. She fell ill hours after a flight back to Dallas on Tuesday and was admitted to Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital, where she works. The CDC says the infection risk to other passengers on that return flight was very low, but that they are trying to interview the 132 people who were on board for safety precautions. Now, Vincent, meanwhile, has been transferred to Emory University Hospital in Atlanta for treatment, as nurses at Texas Health Presbyterian are claiming that the hospital was simply not prepared to take in Ebola patients with its lax guidelines. Now, in a new development, Vincent has said that it was the CDC that gave her the green light to fly. We will be keeping our eyes on the developments on that. Now, tensions are rising in Hong Kong as a new video is going viral. It shows police punching and kicking a pro-democracy demonstrator identified as Ken Sang. Hong Kong police said it is investigating those reports that a group of 6 or 7 plainclothed officers had taken a handcuffed Sang into a corner and beat him while others kept watch. Sang's lawyer said his client had suffered serious injuries. This incident occurring as the city saw some of its worst clashes Wednesday between police and protesters since the pro-democracy rallies began that involved pepper spray as well as 45 arrests. Hong Kong security chief said the officers in question have been temporarily removed from their current duties. And Wednesday marked a month since the Islamic State militants launched their assault on the strategic Syrian border city of Kobani, and the battles continue this hour. More than 550 people are reported to have died on both sides, and 200,000 refugees fleeing the IS advance. The U.S.-led coalition intensified their air campaign in the area in recent days. The Pentagon's press secretary, Rear Admiral John Kirby, said it estimates its airstrikes have killed hundreds of IS fighters, but he warned the city could still fall to the jihadists. And a freak snowstorm has triggered several avalanches on the Himalayan mountains, killing at least 26 trekkers during Nepal's peak hiking season. Most of the casualties are feared to be at the highest point of Annapurna circuit, among them Israelis, Poles, and Nepalese. Dozens of others are feared to be trapped or believed to be on their way down the peak. 2 military helicopters were dispatched from the capital of Kathmandu to help in the rescue operation that has been stunted by the heavy accumulation of snow.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
New data shows the Korean government's yearly forecasts for economic growth and tax revenue over the last few years were mostly far off the mark. Since 2011, the Finance Ministry had estimated economic growth rates that were higher than the actual annual growth rates. The government estimated growth of 3.9% for this year is that, but it's forecast to likely fall short of that as well this year. The Finance Ministry also failed to make correct estimates on annual tax revenues. Over the past 2.5 years or so, the government's actual tax revenue was $19 billion less than the estimates. Meanwhile, an expected hike in tobacco prices next year is forecast to bring in an extra $3 billion in tax revenue. Medical experts in Korea are calling for measures to tackle the growing obesity problem in the country. New research shows 25% of boys in Korea are obese, and this will only increase unless they and their parents are encouraged to make healthier choices. Our Son Jung-in reports.
8-year-old Son Soo-min is heavier than most of his classmates. After a body checkup, his parents were told he has a body fat ratio twice the average for a boy his age. Like many kids in Korea, Soo-min likes to tuck into calorie and carbohydrate-rich food like white rice, red meat, and fast food, and doesn't get enough exercise.
I like snacks and drinks. I like soda like Coke.
His mother wasn't aware of the consequences and just gave him whatever he asked for.
I heard people say that fat children usually end up being taller as adults.
The problem has worsened in recent years. In Korea, 1 in 4 boys aged 5 to 17 are obese, which is slightly higher than the OECD average. What's more concerning is that well over half of those boys remain obese into adulthood and are at higher risk of becoming morbidly obese. Obesity can lead to a host of other health issues like diabetes, high blood pressure, and it can also increase the chance of cerebrovascular disease at a young age.
Obesity is known to cause cancer, including colorectal cancer, breast cancer, as well as asthma, fatty liver, and other liver disorders.
It also incurs great social costs in terms of medical expenses and loss of production. According to recent data, the socioeconomic cost stemming from child obesity in Korea amounts to $1.3 billion each year. Child and teenage obesity not only affects the individual, but their family, school, and the community as a whole. Experts advise parents to create a friendly but firm atmosphere for their children and encourage them to exercise and eat fresh fruit and vegetables to maintain a healthier lifestyle. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Now, as Korea's western port city of Incheon prepares to welcome athletes from all over Asia for this year's Asian Para Games, we're going to focus on 2 Korean athletes that will be taking part and the partners who will be giving them a guiding hand. Ji Myung-gil reports.
Choi Moon-jung has 11 years of experience in wheelchair dance, and she has 2 male partners who help her complete her moves.
I've been run over by her wheelchair so many times, it hurts.
She sits down on the wheelchair and moves to the rhythm.
Men usually do the leading, but my partner leads better than me.
She has to practice with her 2 dance partners all the time, but she refuses to be drawn on who she feels more comfortable with.
If I dance with Park Geun-hye, I feel as though my dress has wings. If I dance with Choi Jong-chul, we fight a lot, but he's very understanding.
Tandem cycling also requires a riding partner. It's vitally important that the visually impaired cyclist pedals in sync with his or her partner. The partner who sits in the front saddle is responsible for pointing the bike in the right direction.
I tell him to step on the pedals faster to keep him on his toes.
I get worn out fast.
Kim Jong-gyu, who is totally blind, has been riding with his partner for 3 years and is looking to win 4 gold medals from the 2 track and 2 road events. The Incheon Asian Para Games kick off on Saturday. Physically challenged athletes from 41 countries will compete in a total of 23 sports events. 김영길, 아리랑 뉴스.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off in the LPGA, where the 2014 LPGA KB Hana Bank Championship begins its four-day event today. And believe it or not, it's the second longest running Asian tour as the event takes place for the 13th year. And of course, the event itself will be filled with some of the biggest names in women's golf, as names like Christy Kerr, Paula Creamer, and Lexi Thompson are set to compete with some of the biggest Korean golfers in Lee So-yeon and Kim Hyo-ju. But highlighting the event will be the newly wedded Park Geun-hye, as she hopes to regain the #1 ranking once again, as Stacey Lewis will not be participating in the event. Well, after the Women's V-League Media Day took place on Tuesday, the Men's League held their Media Day on Wednesday, with 7 teams getting together to talk about the upcoming season. And of course, highlighting the event was manager Shin Chi-young of the Samsung Hwajae Blue Fangs, as his team looks to win their 8th straight championship this season. But head coach Shin believes with the absence of Park Cheol-woo, it should be a tougher season, as the Hyundai Capital Skywalkers look to finally stop the Blue Fangs. Meanwhile, all the coaches agree that this season will be tough, as the number of games have been increased from 30 to 36 starting the season, with the first game being played this Saturday. And now moving over to Wednesday night's KBO action, some big games last night as the Tucson Bears played spoiler against the SK Wyverns, winning 6-3, with the next in heroes being the Lotte Giants 7-6. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the LG Twins tried to clinch the final playoff spot against the Samsung Lions, who look to clinch the pennant. And of course, going into the game here, third inning, Park Geun-hye, that's an RBI double as Samsung takes the lead 1-0. Before Chet Tae-in makes it 3-0 with a 2-run double to right center. Stays that way until the 6th inning as LG gets on board thanks to Lee Byung-gyu's RBI ground out to second. Now 7th inning, Brad Snyder to pinch hit. That's an RBI double, and it's now 3-2 before a wild pitch scores another as LG ties the game at 3. But in the 8th inning, Yamiako Navarro, no doubt about it, a solo shot gives the Samsung Lions the 4-3 lead. Now Samsung would add another insurance run in the inning as they hang on to win this one 5-3 and become the regular season champions for the 4th straight season. Meanwhile, staying in baseball, but over to Japan, where big boy Lee Dae-ho played his first MPB postseason game as the SoftBank Hawks took on the Nihon Fighters on Wednesday night. And not a great start as he struck out in his first 2 at-bats before finishing off at 1 for 3 as the SoftBanks did win this one 3-2. And now with that, finishing things off in the KBL, last year's regular season champions, the Changwon LG Sakers continue to struggle as they lose to Busan KT Sonic Boom 84-79. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Anyang KGC squad take on Seoul's Samsung Thunders. Now, the Samsung Thunders off to a great start as they take a comfortable 48-29 lead going into the second half of the game. But KGC bounces back in the second half, led by CJ Leslie's 33 points as this game goes to overtime. But despite the big comeback, the Samsung Thunders, led by Lee Dong-jun, outscored KGC 9-7 as they hang on to win this one 92-90. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Well, most of the rain clouds have moved out from the peninsula, and overcast skies in the capital will soon turn into mostly sunny skies. So the clouds will gradually give way to lots of sun, but light yellow dust could be seen in some parts of the western parts of the country in the morning hours, and the top temperatures will be a tad cooler than yesterday across much of the country. So let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the daytime highs in the capital will be reaching to 19, while Daegu and Gwangju will top out at 21 and 20 respectively, and Busan will peak at 23 this afternoon. Now, for other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon will see highs of 21 and 20, and Dokdo peaks at 18. Well, it seems like beautiful autumn weather with a bit milder highs are expected by the end of the week under lots of sunshine, but nationwide showers in the early next week will bring a more chill to the air, so bear in mind. That's all I have for you at this hour, and let's send it back to Mark in the studio.
Thank you very much, as always, Jion, for the weather. And that's going to do it from us for today. Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour at 11 a.m. Korea time. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.